I never thought the two people I trusted most would be the ones to destroy me. My name's Jason. I'm 29 years old, and until last year, I thought I had it all figured out. A stable job as an architect, a close relationship with my younger brother Dylan, and most of all, the love of my life, Emily. We'd been together for 3 years, and I had just proposed. She said yes, tears in her eyes, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. Dylan and I had always been close. Sure, we were different. I was the more responsible one, while he floated from job to job, charming his way through life. But I loved him. We shared everything growing up. He even lived with me for a while when he hit a rough patch. I never imagined that behind all those smiles and congratulations, he was hiding something. It started with small things. The way Emily would glance at her phone and quickly put it away when I walked into the room. Or how Dylan suddenly seemed to be around more than usual, offering to help with wedding planning. I brushed it off. They were just being friendly, I told myself. I didn't want to be that jealous guy. But the signs kept piling up. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and noticed Emily wasn't in bed. I walked downstairs and found her whispering on the phone in the kitchen. She froze when she saw me, said it was her cousin. I nodded, but something in my gut twisted. Something wasn't right. Still, I tried to trust her, until the day everything fell apart. I came home early from work one Friday. My firm had canceled a meeting, so I thought I'd surprise Emily and take her out for dinner. Her car was in the driveway. Dylan's was there too. I assumed they were talking wedding stuff again, but as I walked through the front door, what I heard made my blood run cold. Laughter, moaning, her voice, his name. I didn't need to open the bedroom door to know what was happening, but I did, and what I saw burned itself into my memory. Emily, Dylan, my brother, my fiancé, together in my bed. They froze. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked out. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in my car, staring at the dashboard. The betrayal was too deep for words. But one thing was clear. They were going to regret it, and I was going to make sure of it, even if it meant ruining everything they thought they had. After that night, I cut off all contact. Emily tried to call. She texted, begged, cried through voicemails, but I didn't answer. Dylan had the nerve to message me, saying it was a mistake, that they didn't mean to hurt me. The audacity. He didn't even deny it. He just called it a mistake. Like he tripped and fell into my fiancé. What they didn't know was that I wasn't broken. I was angry. I was focused. And most of all, I was patient. 3 weeks passed. I moved out of the apartment we shared and crashed at my friend Eric's place. I needed space to think, and I needed a plan. Eric was the only one I told. He was just as furious as I was. But when I told him I didn't want revenge in the heat of the moment, that I wanted it cold, calculated, and public, he just nodded and said, "I'm in." That's when I found out they were getting married. Yeah, married. Just 6 months after the betrayal, as if nothing had happened. As if they were proud of what they'd done. The invitations went out like clockwork. I wasn't invited, obviously, but my mom called me crying, saying, "You have to come. He's your brother." I almost laughed, but I didn't say no. That's when the plan truly began. I knew Dylan, really knew him. I knew his weaknesses, his ego, his carelessness. I also knew Emily, and what she feared most, public embarrassment. Her worst nightmare? Being humiliated in front of her perfect friends, her carefully curated Instagram followers, her image of the fairy tale bride. Perfect. That would be my weapon. I started collecting things. Text messages, screenshots, old photos of me and Emily, the ones with timestamps, voice recordings from the day I caught them. I had left my phone in my coat pocket, and it had been recording when I walked into the bedroom. The sound quality wasn't perfect, but the moaning and names were clear enough. I gathered everything like a prosecutor building a case. But I wasn't going to court. I was going to their wedding. Now I needed an in. Luckily, weddings need vendors. And Eric had a cousin who owned a photo booth rental company, the kind couples love for their receptions. With a little help, I got myself assigned as the tech guy for the booth at Dylan's wedding. I wore a hat, grew out some facial hair, Stayed in the background. No one noticed. The ceremony was at a lakeside resort. Picture perfect, of course. Emily in a white designer gown, Dylan beaming like he didn't have the moral compass of a cockroach. Everyone clapped, cried, took pictures. And I waited. It wasn't until the reception that I made my move. The photo booth was in a corner near the bar. People came and went, giggling as they tried on feather boas and giant sunglasses. I had already programmed the system. When the clock hit 8:45 p.m., it would stop showing the normal "smile for the camera" screen. Instead, it would start a slideshow of everything. The pictures of me and Emily, time-stamped. The texts where she told me she loved me weeks before the betrayal. Screenshots of Dylan asking her to sneak around behind my back. A short audio clip from that night. And finally, a simple message. To the bride and groom. May your marriage be as honest as it started. The moment arrived. I stepped out of the photo booth corner and made my way toward the exit. Eric was waiting in the car, engine running. From across the room, I saw the first few guests notice the screen. Then the gasps started. Then silence. And then Emily's scream. I didn't look back. But as the reception fell into chaos behind me, I smiled for the first time in months. Justice wasn't always clean. But damn, it felt good. When Eric and I drove away from the resort that night, the silence in the car was thick with adrenaline. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur past, my heart still hammering from the chaos I'd just unleashed. You think it worked? Eric asked. Oh, it worked, I said, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It more than worked. The next morning, the internet confirmed it. Someone, probably one of the guests, had recorded the moment the slideshow started playing. It was already going viral on TikTok and Twitter. Wedding revenge was trending. There I was, in the background of the video, calmly walking out as the crowd gasped and turned toward the screen. The video had over 2 million views by lunchtime. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant even, but all I felt was tired. I hadn't slept, not really. I kept replaying the moment Emily screamed, the sound bouncing around my skull. It wasn't joy or even regret I felt. It was more like relief, like I'd finally set something down that had been weighing on my chest for far too long. Then my phone rang. It was my mom. I ignored it. Then it rang again. This time it was Dylan. Ignored. Then a text from an unknown number. You ruined everything. Hope you're proud of yourself. Emily. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. That afternoon, I drove to the park near my old apartment. It was quiet there. Peaceful. Kids playing in the distance, birds chirping, couples walking their dogs. I sat on a bench and tried to let it all sink in. That's when Dylan found me. I don't know how he knew I'd be there. Maybe muscle memory. We used to come here as kids. He sat on the bench next to me without a word. For a minute, we just stared ahead. I deserved it, he finally said. That surprised me. I was going to hit you, I said, keeping my tone even. That night, when I found you both. I know, he nodded. I thought you would. I thought you should. We sat in silence again. I didn't love her, he blurted. I turned to look at him. It was stupid, he continued, eyes on the ground. She was around all the time. You were always talking about her. I don't know, man. I messed up. That's not messing up, Dylan, I snapped. That's betrayal. I know, his voice cracked. I lost everything. She's gone. Dad won't talk to me. Mom's heartbroken. And now the whole internet thinks I'm the worst person on earth. I didn't say anything, mostly because he was right. Was it worth it? He asked after a while. I looked at him. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but it wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. You both painted this picture. Perfect couple, happy ending. But it was built on a lie. I just gave the guests a clearer picture. He nodded slowly, accepting it. I wish I could take it back, he murmured. But you can't, I replied. Neither can I. He stood up, shoved his hands in his pockets. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time, I believed he meant it. I didn't say anything as he walked away. Maybe someday I'd forgive him, but not yet. That night, I finally turned my phone back on. Hundreds of messages poured in. Some from strangers praising me for the epic takedown. Some from old friends who had seen the video and were checking in. A few were job offers, apparently. Being the guy who exposed his cheating fiancé and brother at their wedding had opened some unexpected doors. But the message that stood out was from a number I didn't recognize. It read, "You don't know me, but I just watched your video. I went through something similar. Just wanted to say thank you for showing that sometimes the truth really does come out." I smiled for the first time in a long while, because in the end, this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about taking your pain, your betrayal, and turning it into something that could help someone else. And that was worth everything. The days that followed felt like living in a strange limbo, somewhere between catharsis and chaos. My name was being tossed around online like a folk legend, the guy who dropped receipts at his brother's wedding. People I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly reaching out. Some messages were kind, filled with empathy and shared experiences. Others were just in it for the drama, asking for interviews, podcast appearances, even a documentary offer from a small production company. But none of that really mattered, because at the end of the day, I still had to wake up and face the silence in my apartment. No Emily, no wedding plans, just a fridge half full of champagne I didn't have the heart to throw away. One afternoon, I got a call from Dad. We hadn't spoken since the night of the wedding. "Hey son," he said, his voice heavier than usual. "Hey, you okay?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Are you?" He sighed. "I'm angry, not at you, at the situation, at your brother, at myself." We talked for over an hour. He admitted he'd suspected something was off with Emily for a while, but never said anything. "I thought maybe I was just being protective," he confessed. "Didn't want to interfere." I told him I didn't blame him. Not really. I blame the people who broke my trust, not the ones who missed the signs. Before we hung up, he said, "You did what you had to do. You told the truth. That takes guts." I didn't cry until after the call ended. That night, I met up with Eric again. My best man, my co-conspirator, my brother in all but blood. "You really gonna turn down that podcast interview?" he asked, sipping his beer. "I don't want to become a meme," I replied. "I didn't do this for clout." He nodded. "Still, you'd make a hell of a speaker. Might be therapeutic." "Therapy is what I actually need," I said with a laugh. He grinned. Fair. Eric had been solid through the whole mess. He never once asked me to dial it back. He never questioned my decision to go through with the reveal. He just showed up, every time, ready to help however I needed. That kind of loyalty was rare, and it reminded me that not all relationships fall apart. Some get stronger in the storm. A week later, I received a letter. An actual letter. From Emily. I stared at the envelope for an hour before opening it. Inside was a simple, handwritten message. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect understanding. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for getting caught, but for hurting someone who didn't deserve it. You were good to me, and I failed you. Emily." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and left it there. Some apologies are for closure. Others are just echoes of a past that no longer needs answering. I started to rebuild, slowly. Got back into the gym. Went to therapy. Took a solo trip to Colorado just to clear my head. Somewhere between the mountain air and long silent hikes, I found peace, or at least the beginning of it. On one of those hikes, I ran into a group of high school students on a leadership retreat. Their counselor recognized me from the wedding video. "Wait, you're that guy," she said. "The wedding reveal guy." I laughed, shaking my head. "That's me." She looked at the kids and smiled. "He's proof that speaking your truth matters." It stuck with me. When I got back home, I started journaling, then blogging, then speaking at small events about truth, trust, and healing. It felt good, not like I was capitalizing on what happened, but transforming it into something meaningful. Meanwhile, Dylan went dark on social media. Word got around that he'd lost his job, not officially because of the wedding fiasco, but it certainly didn't help. Emily moved to a different city, started working for a nonprofit, and went quiet too. And me? I stayed. I faced the town. I faced the whispers, the glances, the awkward run-ins at the grocery store. And I held my head up. Because I had nothing to be ashamed of. I told the truth. I stood up for myself. And little by little, I was building a life that wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about recovery. 2 months passed. 2 whole months since the infamous wedding crash, and yet the fallout was still unraveling in slow, brutal motion. I wasn't actively trying to keep tabs on Dylan or Emily. I unfollowed them, muted every shared connection, did everything a therapist would recommend. But in a town like ours, gossip travels faster than Wi-Fi. Turns out Dylan didn't just lose his job. He lost his reputation. Apparently, some of his biggest clients had been at the wedding. Seeing him exposed in front of 200+ guests didn't exactly scream trustworthy business partner. Within weeks, the firm's senior partners asked him to take an indefinite leave. He was quietly removed from the website a few days later. The worst part? Mom still defended him. It was a mistake, she said, eyes brimming with tears over our Sunday dinner. A mistake is forgetting a birthday, I said calmly, not sleeping with your brother's fiancée for months. Dad, to his credit, didn't say much, just stabbed his peas and stared at the table like it had personally offended him. I didn't push. I was learning that not every wound needs to be reopened every time we sit down to eat. Instead, I focused on me, and that's when something unexpected happened. One morning, while checking my email, I saw a message with the subject line, "Want to share your story on stage?" It was from a TEDx organizer in Austin. Apparently, one of the small podcasts I did, against my better judgment, had gone mildly viral. They heard my segment about betrayal, truth, and rebuilding after public humiliation, and thought I'd make a great addition to their lineup. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a speaker. I was just a guy who got burned. But then I remembered something my therapist said. Maybe the world doesn't need more polished speakers. Maybe it needs real people telling real stories. So I said yes. Preparing the talk was harder than I thought. I had to relive everything, from the engagement, the affair, the wedding reveal, to the strange empty silence that followed. I cried twice while rehearsing, laughed once, got angry all over again. But in the end, it started to feel less like trauma and more like testimony. When I stood on that red dot under the spotlight, something shifted in me. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was owning it. I talked about self-worth, about betrayal from the people you trust the most, about how silence protects the wrong people, about how truth, no matter how messy, is the beginning of healing. And when I walked off stage, the applause wasn't just loud. It was long. It was validating. Backstage, a woman in her 30s approached me. Her eyes were red. "Your story." "It's mine too," she said. "Different names, different faces, but same betrayal." I thought I was crazy for feeling broken. Thank you for making me feel less alone. That moment hit harder than any spotlight could. I went home that night feeling light, like I had finally exhaled after months of holding my breath. Meanwhile, karma was still working overtime on Dylan and Emily. Word got out that Emily had been blacklisted from a few major social circles. Apparently, some of her bridesmaids were appalled by her role in the betrayal. One of them even returned her dress mid-ceremony. She moved to Chicago, started working at a nonprofit. Quiet life, quiet social media. It looked like she was rebuilding in her own way. Dylan, though, not so much. He tried launching a podcast, Life Lessons with Dylan. But let's just say people weren't interested in hearing moral advice from a man who ruined his brother's engagement. The first episode barely cracked 500 listens. The second never happened. Last I heard, he moved back in with Mom. Started working for a friend's startup. Small-time gig, low pay. A far cry from the tailored suits and boardrooms he used to brag about. It was tempting to feel smug, but I didn't. Not really. Because somewhere between that wedding disaster and that TEDx stage, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about release. About a week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a simple wooden box. No note. Just a flash drive labeled, "For you, when you're ready." It was from Emily. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't open it. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer needed answers from her to move forward. Instead, I put the box away. Maybe for another day, maybe forever. I had new things to focus on now. New dreams, new boundaries, new respect for myself. The wedding was over. The drama was dying. But my story? It was only just beginning. 6 months after everything blew up, I found myself walking into a quiet coffee shop just off Main Street. Not because I was meeting someone, not for a date, just because I could. It was a new spot, calm. No memories lingering in the booths, no ghosts at the tables. I ordered my drink and sat near the window, staring out at the world going by. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't wondering what I could have done differently. I wasn't replaying the betrayal or the look on Dylan's face when the truth hit him like a freight train. That version of me, the hurt, the heartbroken, the angry, he'd done his time. This new version, he was finally free. But as life has it, the universe wasn't done just yet. That afternoon, I got a call from Dad. We hadn't talked much since the wedding. Our relationship had been tense, brittle, like walking on ice. He was always somewhere between disappointment and denial. But now his voice was calm. Your mother and I, we've been thinking a lot, he said. We saw your TEDx talk. Your mom cried. That surprised me. I just want you to know, he continued, we're sorry. For not seeing things earlier. For making excuses for Dylan. For not protecting you when you needed it most. The words hung in the air. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let him sit in it, the same way I had to sit in my own pain. And then I said, thank you. Because that's all I needed. Not groveling, not reparations, just ownership. He offered to meet for dinner. Just the two of us. I said yes. Later that week, over burgers and fries at a diner we used to visit when I was a kid, we talked like actual human beings. No expectations, no family politics, just father and son. That night, something shifted. A bridge rebuilt, not to return to what was, but to begin again, healthier, stronger. Meanwhile, Dylan reached out a month later. A long message. Not the usual, I messed up, please forgive me kind. This one was different. It was raw, honest. For once, no arrogance, no gaslighting. He told me how he'd lost almost everything. Career, respect, and most painfully, self-worth. He admitted he'd been living in my shadow for years, and instead of dealing with it, he sabotaged the one thing I held sacred, my relationship. He ended the message with, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I've started therapy, and I'm trying to become someone I'm not ashamed of. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because healing isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's a boundary, and I needed mine. Fast forward to today. 1 year since my brother's almost wedding. I've moved to a new city, started working with an education-focused nonprofit that partners with communities affected by trauma. They say the best people to help others heal are those who've walked through the fire and lived to tell the story. Guess I qualified. And as for love? Funny thing, I met someone. It wasn't fireworks at first sight, no sweeping drama, no whirlwind romance. It was slow, steady, real. Her name is Lauren, a social worker with a sarcastic sense of humor and a killer taste in music. On our first date, she asked me what my last relationship was like. I laughed. You want the short version or the Netflix documentary? She laughed too. And we talked, honestly, vulnerably, fully. Turns out, when you've been broken wide open, you stop pretending. And the people who stay after that, they're the real ones. One night, as we watched the city lights from her apartment balcony, Lauren said something I'll never forget. You know, people always talk about revenge like it's this satisfying final act, but maybe the best revenge isn't destruction. Maybe it's healing, living well, loving better. She was right. Dylan's wedding wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. Because sometimes when life breaks you down, it's only clearing space for something better, something truer. And when you finally stop chasing closure and start building your own peace, that's when real freedom begins. So to anyone out there who's been betrayed, discarded, underestimated, you are not the pain they left you with. You are the story you write after, and I promise, that story can be beautiful, even if it starts in a room full of shattered vows.